Hello my friends, and welcome to the first video on the remake of my old money income series. So what I'm going to try to do is to remake or retest again all of my previously made money income videos and also test new areas on top of those. So for today we are going to be discussing about the Cadry Ruins area. Since this is the first video in this series, I'm going to have to do a lot of explanation, and also I'm pretty sure the video is going to be quite long, so just keep that in mind as we move forward. So let me begin by explaining how this test actually works. So for once I decided to stop doing synthetic tests and just do a practical test that could apply to everyone who wants to go to grind, for example at Cadry Ruins. So for this series I'm going to be including all of the downtimes that I'm having, all of the repairs, bills, and also everything else that goes on in my grinding session. So basically I'm going to start from idle and I'm going to grind for a certain amount of time, in this video's case for about 10 hours, and then I'm going to be returning back to idle, and I'm going to include every downtime and, as I said, every repair bill and everything that goes on in those 10 hours from starting to idle and all the way returning back there. The reason why I decided to perform the test this way is because obviously Idle is my main city, and I want to know for certain if I go out and grind a certain area how much money I'm going to be actually making. Since usually I start from Idle and I also return back here, it would be interesting to see exactly the profit that I'm getting in those 10 hours, instead of just testing a certain amount of time and not including all of the downtime that I usually have. Also, this should be quite interesting for other people, since I'm pretty sure that's how most people grind, and also I'm pretty sure that most people have Idle as their main city. So that's about all I can say about the basics. Now let's finally begin with the test. So the first thing to talk about is obviously my character. For those who don't know yet, which might be some people, I am playing a level 60 wizard and I have about 218 attack power, at least for this test. And this is actually important because on Cadry Ruins you need high attack power to be able to kill the mobs quite efficiently. As in, mobs here have blocks and you need high attack power to kill them in 1 or 2 shots, because if you don't have enough attack power they are going to have enough time to block, so you're going to grind a lot slower. Now about the actual gear, I'm not exactly sure how important it is, but if you have somewhere around 200 attack power you should be getting similar results to mine, especially since for this test I was prioritizing the elite monsters over the actual mobs. So the way I was grinding is I was going from one side, basically from the rotation near the gatekeeper, all the way to the end where the 7th elite mob spawns, and I was doing this over and over by switching channels again and again, and usually it takes me around 8 minutes to clear all of the elites if they are all alive, and then I was using the rest of the time to grind the mobs on the gatekeeper rotation. So this way I was optimizing my money income by dropping some experience, as in I was getting lower experience, but I was getting the most amount of money possible. If you did pay attention to the video playing on the background, you will notice that I started from idle and I was using my tier 6 horse to manually run to the actual grinding spot, and it took me somewhere around 5.5 minutes to get there. So that's going to be the travel time that I'm including to go and return, 5.5 minutes. Since some people may point this out in the comment section, this test is done from my own perspective, so you may have a slower or a faster horse, or you may have better or worse gear than mine, so keep in mind that you may get more or less money depending on that. Now there are a few last things that I should point out, and I know I most likely alienated most of you already, but I wasn't exactly pushing these 10 hours, so I was grinding at a normal pace while watching TV shows on the background. So just know that if you are pushing to grind as fast as possible yourself, you will probably do better than I did. And also about the experience, I was grinding with the experience helmet that I have, and I wasn't exactly using it all of the time, and also I was using experienced elixirs, and I was grinding during the night time, so since the experience was inconsistent, I'm not going to be counting it. Now, with all the explanation aside, let's finally begin by talking about the data. I grinded these 10 hours during a period of 4 days, so it wasn't exactly one after another, but I was making sure to begin the next session right where I was ending the previous one. So you can count it as a whole 10-hour session, but in reality I grinded it during 4 days. And I took a lot of screenshots during these 4 days, and we are going to be talking about those. I'm not going to be talking about every single screenshot in detail because that would simply take way too much time, so you can watch them playing in the background if you want to see a bigger picture. But to give you guys a shorter version, basically on day 1 I started from Heidel, of course, and 5 minutes later I arrived at the grinding spot, and from here I grinded for a while, and then I got overweight, and also I had an inventory full of weapons from the elite mobs, so I had to leave to Shakato to sell all of the items and then return for a second grinding session. And please note that this is the only time when I actually had to leave directly to Shakato, because on the other grinding sessions I was using the red battlefield instance to sell the weapons from the elite mobs to exchange them from physical items to actual silver, which is obviously weighing less and it takes less inventory space. So that's probably important, because this way you can extend your grinding time and not have to spend 5 minutes to go to Shakato. After I returned, I did a second session, and after about half an hour my horse died somehow, or maybe died earlier and I didn't notice, so I had to make a stop and leave for Shakato again to revive my horse, sell the items and return back. And after returning here to grind for a third session, I had to stop because I just had to go AFK, so that was it for day 1. To make an overall time, for day 1 I grinded exactly 2 hours and 6 minutes and had a downtime of 23 minutes, and this is by far the highest downtime that I've had for all the 4 days. Moving on to day 2, I started exactly from where I logged off the previous day with the items that I already had in my inventory, and after about 1.5 hours I got overweight from the pure silver and the weapons that I already had in the inventory and so on, so I took my horse and I left to Shakato to drop the items and sell the weapons, and then I returned here for a second grinding session. And again, after I got overweight from the silver and the items, I stopped the entire run for that day, because it was almost time for the node war, so I just didn't have more time to test further. Again, to put the grind time in numbers, I grinded a total of 2 hours and 54 minutes, so almost 3 hours of grind time and only 9 minutes of total downtime. Moving on to day 3, again I started from where I left off the previous day. So I started from Shakato and then I went back to the grinding spot. I grinded for a while, and when I got overweight I returned to Shakato to sell the items. Then I went back to the grinding spot, and that was it for day 3. So I only did one grinding session. Even though I returned back to the spot, I just logged off and that was it. So I did a total of 1 hour and 44 minutes of grind time and 7 minutes of downtime. And now for day 4, I started off exactly from where I logged off the previous day, and I did again only one grinding session. So I grinded for about 2 hours and 14 minutes, and then when I returned back to Shakato, that was it for the entire test. So in total I would say that I grinded about 1 to 2 sessions for each day, and they were about 1.5 hours or 2 hours of grinding sessions. Also, even though I stopped the test in Shakato, I added another 5 minutes to simulate the run from Shakato back to Heidel on my horse. So if I do that, then the total downtime was about 49 minutes for the entire grinding session. At this point I realized that I explained the screenshots a little bit too fast, so I'm sorry for the fast-paced video footage that will be playing on the background, but you should get the idea anyway. Basically I was grinding, I was returning, selling the items and returning back to grinding and so on. But one thing to keep in mind that I didn't point out yet is that all of the repair bills were actually already introduced in the final values I'm going to be talking about later, because I was always repairing my armor when I was returning back to Shakatu. Also, if you have the maximum weight limit and a lot of inventory spaces, you might be able to grind for longer periods of time than I did, but that's just a small change of maybe 3 or 4 minutes of downtime, so it's not exactly significant. So now let's draw some form of conclusion from the loot table that I got out of these 10 hours. And the first thing that I want to point out about this is that the final result will depend on two different factors. So one of them is if you're actually selling all of the items to the marketplace or if you're just keeping them, and the second one is if you're actually doing the Pilaf scrolls or if you're selling the scrolls to the marketplace, because again that influences the final value. I personally just sell everything to the marketplace because I stopped enhancing a long time ago, so I don't really need blackstones or memory fragments, so I just take the pure silver. But before we get into that part, there's still the issue of how much money each item is actually worth, because I know this depends a lot on what server you're playing on. So for example, on Europe servers, the Pilaf scrolls are about 1.4 million, while on the NA servers I believe someone told me they are under 1 million each, so it's quite a big difference. I would suggest that you just look on the screen and take all of the items and put your own values from your own marketplace on them, depending on what server you're playing. But for this video I'm only going to be using the Europe values. Also, in terms of rare items at Cadry Ruins, you can either get a Serap necklace from the elites with a very low drop rate, or you can get a Cadry ring which is pretty much worthless, but you will eventually end up selling it to the marketplace. So in my case I got one ring as a pure drop and a lot of pieces that I could use to make a second ring, but since I didn't get enough to actually make a full ring, I'm only going to be using that one ring as value for this table, because I'm pretty sure in 10 hours you're not going to be getting more than one ring, if you even get one. And there's a Serap necklace which you can get it, but I didn't get any, so if I did I would get about 29 millions extra, but since I didn't, then I'm not going to be including it. Let's begin by talking about the first case where you decide to sell everything to the marketplace. So for that one I'm going to be using the actual current prices for every item, even though Blackstone weapons for example can go as high as 300k, at the moment they are 251, so that's their current price. And if I use those values and I make an average out of these 10 hours, then I got about 13.1 millions per hour, including all of the downtime. And if I decide to exclude that downtime, then I got about 14.3 millions per hour. And I'm not exactly sure how useful the second value is, since the whole purpose of this video is to include the downtime, but if you want to know just pure grind time money, then that's about 14.3 millions if you sell all the items to the marketplace using a value pack. So they are reduced to a value of 84.5%. Now for the second value, if you decide to keep all of these items for later use, including the gem and the Cadry ring, then if I make an average out of the 10 hours, you will get about 14.8 millions per hour, including the downtime, and about 16.2 millions per hour excluding that downtime. So the values go up a bit, but then again, who's going to keep the gems and the Cadry ring? Maybe you're going to keep the blackstones and the scrolls, but the others you're still going to be selling, most likely. And now for a third and last case. This one is rather interesting because this one represents the case where you decide to take all of these scrolls, do them yourself, and then sell the memory fragments to the marketplace. If you want to keep them, that's fine, but in my case I would prefer to sell them. So I took a party of 5 Pilaf scrolls, even though I personally had 6, and I did all of those in about 32 minutes. Then if you add another 10 minutes, that's about 42 minutes to do the entire run plus the travel to and back to Heidel. So let's say you do the entire Pilaf run in 42 minutes. Then in that time you're going to be wasting 42 minutes to do the scrolls that you already had from the run instead of selling them to the marketplace for instant profit. And the interesting fact is that if you decide to sell 30 of these, basically 30 pieces make 5 scrolls. So if you sell 30 of those scrolls to the marketplace at 1.4 millions, you're going to get 36 millions of profit. Well, not of profit, but of total value. So you're getting 36 millions total value if you sell them, and if you spend 40 minutes or so to do the actual run and then sell everything that I personally got from that run, I got 36.6 millions. So it's almost the same value, and that was quite surprising because I didn't expect Pilaf to be that worthless to do and sell. I may have just gotten unlucky with the drops because I did only get 10 memory fragments from the other people, as in the drops, and then a total of 52 total memory fragments from my 6 scrolls opened. You may get a little bit more memory fragments, but still, if you add maybe 5 or 6 more millions to the profit, I still don't see the value in wasting 40 minutes to gain 6 or 7 millions profit if you could use that time to grind another 40 minutes of Cadry Ruins and get even more money. Since you can make about 13 millions per hour, I expect 40 minutes to be worth more than 6 or 7 millions. Again, I know this depends a lot on the server you're playing, because for example on NA, if Pilaf scrolls are worth only 1 million, then of course do them because you're getting a much higher profit. So I guess that about does it for this video. I know I've made a quite long video, but I tried to explain as much as possible, and definitely let me know in the comment section if you want me to change this format. As in, I could explain less and I could probably just show the final result of 10 hours and then talk about that instead of talking about the whole process and about what happened in those 10 hours. So let me know if you want me to include less detail in the video and just make it simpler. But this video is done, so if you want to discuss about this further, again leave a comment below and we can continue this conversation. I'm pretty interested to see what you guys can make us profit on Cadry Ruins, because I know most classes grind slower than wizards, and it matters a lot what is your AP when it comes to killing elites, because I'm pretty sure people who have under 200 AP are going to need more time to kill elite monsters. So if you made it this far into the video, thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you next time when I'm going to be testing bandits.